how and what were their beliefs regarding the criticism, regarding drama, regarding what kind of discourse in literary discourse should be is ideal. As Plato said, poetry is not ideal. But later, his own disciple Aristotle, he said that poetry and imitation is a kind of higher kind of pleasure it provides. So poet should not be banished from this thing. So when we talk about discourse, what are the modes of discourse? So there are many modes of discourse. One of it very popular one is narration, that is storytelling. See, if you have heard the name of Yuval Noah Harari, who has written *Sapiens* and who has written about the world history, he says that in the world, the whole world, the way you tell the stories make you successful. That means Homer and Iliad, who told their stories, they became successful. In the same way, in India, Ramayana and Mahabharata, these are the most successful stories which were told in such a manner that for ages it has been told, and even today they are popular. Second way of discourse is descriptions, like descriptions of places, persons, various characters. Third is exposition. This is a Greek word, based on Greek word. Exposition means to place a person, things, settings, action, etc. in a particular manner. That is exposition. The fourth way of discourse is argument. When you make an argument, then it is naturally it should be based on logic. Some kind of logic is there. Without logic, you cannot make a strong argument. So the person who is writing argument, making argument, he tries to convince through logic, and that is why it is called thesis. Whenever we are writing a thesis, even when we are doing some research, it is based on logic. See, nowadays, very few people know how a research should be followed. It should be pursued rather. Right. When you are writing a research or even a research paper, there should be an argument, and you argue either in favor of your proposition or against the proposition, right? So you have to consider both the pros and cons, and you have to make arguments on the basis of evidences. It is not a simple argument for without having any evidence, or without having any logical support. Then now, which is more prevalent on TVs and other places, debate. Debate is also one of the most popular discourse nowadays. Now, in Greek terms, when you are doing this discourse, there are these terms which are very, very popular and which should be understood by us. One, as I told you, logic, that is logos. On the basis of logic, you can make some discourse. Then when you are explaining something, when I am trying to explain something, and if you don't understand, if you go on arguing, or if you go on asking questions, then there might be some pathos. I have to take some pains to explain my argument. Then the third one is ethos. Ethos means I want to suggest that I am honest person, and my argument, it should be, when I want to convince you, I try to convince you on my ethos, on my intentions, that I am an honest person, and there are no other intentions while making some arguments. The last one is mythos. So on the basis of mythos means mythology, that is, every country's cultural heritage is based on mythology. And that is why when you see these kathakars, when they tell kathas, Bhagavad Katha, Ram Katha, They tell you the mythological stories, like Shiva and Parvati and all that, Ram and Sita. Hmm. For us, Ram and Sita or Shiva and Parvati, which we consider those Puranas and our scriptures, our history. So we don't tell that mythology, but still in Greek mythology also, when you use some mythology, it becomes stronger. Your argument becomes stronger. So this is something regarding the modes of various discourse. Now, when we talk about literary studies or literary criticism, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these literary studies in the first part of the 20th century were dominated by what are now we call them traditional approaches. Now, what are these traditional approaches and why they are called traditionals? Because in later part of the 20th century, as I told you, in America, the new critics, it was a group of critics. Actually, there wasn't no school of new critics, but they spontaneously they started thinking in the way they thought, right? And they believed that this extrinsic approach to literature is not proper. Now, what is this extrinsic approach? Extrinsic means external, something which is coming from outside. Now, outside means what? Now, these new critics they believe that there should be only and only the text which should be considered for the criticism. While these traditional approaches, they considered historical, biographical, social, and other elements, other background or other information which was available about the author, about the text, whatever events were responsible for the particular write up or the text. So that was called a traditional approach. Now they focus on understanding literary works by bringing external information to bear on them rather than by close and careful consideration of what is already expressed in the work itself. Now, these are the two poles. One is traditional, and second, as I told you, the new critics. Now, the new critics they consider only and only the work, the written work. It may be a poem, it may be a novel, it may be a short story, whatever. Literary genre, as you know, there are so many genres. But when we talk about any particular text, it can be a poem, a drama, whatever, a play or a novel or a short story, anything, right? But this traditional approaches, the critics who believed in traditional approaches for evaluation of the text, they consider this external information which was available and which was useful also, right? So that does not mean that they were not reading the text itself closely. They read the text closely, but as well as they applied the knowledge of the background, they applied the information which was available to them regarding a particular text. Right. Now, suppose if any such information is not available, and only on the basis of the text which is available to you, you have to evaluate or you have to interpret the text. How would you do it? I have taken one example of Kubla Khan, and that Kubla Khan, which was written by St Coleridge. This is just a picture I got when I wrote in Google regarding the Kubla Khan. Now Kubla Khan is a poem. I won't tell you the other things first, but you can see a palace like structure in the background. There is a hill, right? There is a river, and there are trees and kind of forest in the picture. And there are two girls, right? Two female characters are seen in this picture. Okay. Now, if we go directly to the text, This is the title, Kubla Khan or a Vision in a Dream. See, the title itself suggests many things. It is a vision in a dream, a fragment. So this poem is a fragment. It is a vision seen in a dream. The poet himself, S.T. Coleridge himself, has mentioned you that this is a poem which was seen as a dream, as a vision, and which is fragmentary. Now, let us read the poem. I know most of you will not be able to understand what it means, okay? But let us make it try. In Xanadu, did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decreed, where Alf, the sacred river, ran through caverns, bezel-less to man, down to a sunless sea. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground. Twice 5 miles of fertile ground. That means 10 miles. With walls and towers were girdled around, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills. Sinuous rills means the streams, where blossomed many an incense bearing trees. And here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. But oh, the deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill athwart a sudden cover, a savage place, as holy and enchanted. This is not the full poem, right? This is a piece of the poem I have selected, because if I take the complete poem, it will be 2-3 pages, 2-3 slides rather. Now, what you see is the description of the picture you have seen. If I don't tell you about the background, did you get anything out of these words? Please tell me. Any one or two or three,
No, ma'am.
right?
Quite impossible.
Huh?
Impossible. Impossible. If you don't show the picture, we can't understand this poem.
No, picture
At
is
least a bit.
okay, fine. But still, I have not given you the background. So
Yeah, yeah.
when I am not giving you the background, how much of these words could you make out?
Mm, no, nothing. We can't font.
Now let me tell you the background of this poem.
Yeah.
As I told you, S.T. Coleridge had an opium. Okay, he had taken opium and he was sitting in this place somewhere, right? And he had a vision like this. He had a dream like vision, right? And he was just he decided to take a pen and write down this thing. Now what happened, he wrote down this much of lines, and after that one person, a business person, came to him. He just disturbed him. He asked him some questions, some business questions, and then went away. Now after that, for Coleridge, it became very difficult to recollect what he had seen in the dream. So it was almost, you know, he was unable to write down the whole poem which he had visualized. So if you read the whole poem, you can see the difference. You can see there is a fragment, right? Now, if you don't get this background, this what we say biographical information regarding Kubla Khan, regarding S.T. Coleridge's own experience, how would you be able to understand this poem? Okay. And why he feel this a place as a savage place, and he feel it is holy as well as enchanted, right? So all these what we call extrinsic elements or external elements, external information, they help you to understand the whole text. Otherwise, without the help of this kind of information, how you can understand a poem, how much you can what do we say, interpret the poem, and how can you write a critical appreciation of it. Shriti Rani is a teacher, so she knows. She must be telling her students, write a critical appreciation of this poem, right? So,
Yes, ma'am.
so if you provide this kind of background to the students, they will be able to write something. This was the situation. S.T. Coleridge had taken an opium, and he was in such a what we say, stage of trance. He went into
Ecstasy.
trance, and then he visualized this kind of dream, and then he started writing. But again, there was some disturbance. A person came, there was a conversation, and because of that conversation, whatever he had seen in his dream, he could not recollect later on. So this was the, and that is why there is a kind of break in the what we call the poem. The same mood is not continued, right? So as this traditional theorists or traditional approaches, they believe that this kind of information, background, social, biographical, and sometimes even political background do affect the poet or the writer. And that is why this kind of information make you understand the work in a better manner. Do you agree to it or not? We'll take another example also later on. So, to certain extent, all approaches to literature are, by definition, extrinsic because a reader must have a certain basic information at hand to read a literary work at all. At the very least, a reader must know the language in which the work is written and must possess a certain basic amount of cultural knowledge. See, while whoever whoever have studied English literature, being an Indian, you always face some kind of problem in understanding the text because so many things which are associated with their culture, with their religion, you can't understand. I remember one of W.B. Yeats' poem, which was taught to us by our professor, learned professor, Dr. Digish Mehta at that time. And he asked one question. There was a word Jesuit, Jesuit. Now, while teaching this poem, he asked one question to the class. What do you understand by this word Jesuit? Now he showed a finger to me, and I said, "Sir, no, sorry, I don't understand. I don't know what is the meaning of this word." Then she asked one girl, Jenny Rathod. She was our classmate, and she was the gold medalist of our that batch. So he asked him. He asked her, "What is the meaning of Jesuit?" She said, "I don't know, sir." Then he asked because she was a Xavier. She was a student of Xavier's. He said, "You don't know? How come it is possible? No, because you must know that." So, when you are associated with the Christian culture, you must know the meaning. And when you are not, you are disassociated with this culture, you can't understand what are the context of this particular word and what are the cultural connotations are associated with that particular word. So, the amount of cultural knowledge or the background you have, you understand the text in a better manner. A reader must have at least a minimal understanding of the conventions of literature to process the content of a literary work in a coherent way. Unless and until you know the conventions of literature, see, if you are studying English drama or Greek drama, and if you don't know what is a chorus or what is the convention of chorus, you may fail to understand why it is there in the beginning, right? Uh, like in our Sanskrit literature also, they invoke the god, right? Invocation to god is there. In the same manner, in this English literature and Greek literature, there is an invocation to god. They the Devi, this goddess is called the goddess of muse. like our Saraswati Devi, and they invoke this goddess and they go ahead. The poet start writing. So we might compare the use of external information to aid the interpretation of a literary text to the activities of its creator, who interprets the workings of the nature in the world. See, unless and until you have any outside information regarding the creator, regarding his context, regarding the situation he was facing, you cannot understand why he is writing a particular piece of literature. For instance, the beauty of the stars can be appreciated without being an expert in astronomy. Yes, right. Even if I am not a student of astronomy, I am not an expert of astronomy, I can appreciate the beauty. I can enjoy the beauty. I can love those stars in the sky. But even the most seemingly naive appreciation of the beauty of nature involves a complex process of cultural conditioning. When I describe the nature, it will reflect my own cultural conditioning. How and why? You may have a question. See, in English literature, the most popular nature poets are William Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, Keats, and P.B. Shelley. These are all romantic poets. And they are very popular because they have delineated nature in such a manner, particularly Wordsworth, when he is writing his Lucy poems. Then you can feel the thing. The whole picture is created against you. And if there is not a picture, you can realize that picture against your eyes, whether they are open or closed. So that kind of cultural conditioning is there. Then a poet can appreciate the beauty of nature and he can put it into words. So this realization of the words is always different in every reader, as well as his own conditioning. Means poet is writing, but when you are making a realization, your own visualization, realization is different as a reader. I may find out some different thing. You may find out something different. That depends upon our own conditioning, our own culture, our own background, our own experiences in past. Right? Am I right or wrong? Hello?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Right? Because
Yeah.
you may appreciate in your own way, you may have interpreted it in your own way, and I may interpret in some other way. Right? So, more scholarly traditional approaches also include biographical studies. It is not merely the background or the information, but biographical studies, philosophical studies, and textual studies. So, biographical studies, as I told you, if you know a particular poet had lived in this age, if he is a Victorian poet, then there might be some context of Victorian age. Some characteristics might be common, or he may be representing his own age, his or her own age. And that is why some biographical details are very much useful in understanding a particular piece of literature. Right. Secondly, philosophical studies. The ideas expressed in a literary text, when they are compared to well known philosophical concepts and often judged in relation to the critic's own moral or philosophical stance, then it does focus or it does throw light on some various philosophical aspect. So, when a poet and when the reader both are knowledgeable enough of some philosophical studies, it helps us to understand and throw some light on such philosophical ideas. Textual studies, as we have already discussed, in which historical record is carefully shifted in an attempt to determine the precisely correct rendering of literary text. Textual studies as well as the historical record. I have later on taken one more example in which you can see how without having the historical record, it becomes almost useless to read the text. So, in traditional approach, the work of art frequently appears to be a source that illustrates background. In traditional approach, the only work of art does not mean anything. So, without having any background, you cannot evaluate, you cannot judge it, you cannot understand it. We have seen one example of it. And such an approach often leads to the study of literature as essentially biography, history, or some other branch of learning rather than as an art. Now, this is an argument which makes this traditional approach, which argues against the traditional approach. So, we have to see the things both the ways. Whether traditional approaches are helpful in understanding and appreciating and interpreting the particular text, or they are useless, or they are misleading you. Here, the argument is that this biography, history, or some other social context may lead your literary piece to another branch of learning rather than as an art. Now, let me have your own opinion. Do you think so? That when you know the social background, historical background, or biographical background, your appreciation of art will be misleading you, or it will be leading you to some other branch.
I think it will lead to the some another branch because knowing the details, we can relate to it more deeply or no, precisely.
Hmm. Yeah. So, do you think that it is useless or it should not be applied? While evaluating a text, you should not study the biography, you should not have any external information, you should not know about the context, historical context or social context of the author.
नहीं
No,
जानना
ma'am.
तो जरूरी
Actually,
है.
हाँ जानना
Yes,
जरूरी है.
Hmm. We should know
yes,
because unless and until we know the details about the writer or the poet, how can we relate to him and know that in which situation he has written that the
exactly,
context? Yeah.
exactly. When you
Even
know
ma'am,
this,
even if you see the Ramayana and
yeah,
Mahabharata, we can't interpret it well if we don't know such cultural aspects of that background where the katha happened. So it is really necessary for us to interpret that story, how it went, in which situation the Rama took the decision of leaving Sita behind. So
yes,
I think it is
yes.
necessary.
Yeah, so background is very much necessary. See, if you talk about Kalidasa and the story, we don't know whether the story was correct or not. We don't have evidences. But still, when we there's here this story of cutting the same branch of a tree
Yes, when
on
you
which he was sitting, right? So he was such a fool, and then he became such a learned poet. So when you know such background stories, you may respect the poet in a proper manner. Otherwise, you may not. We don't support such make believe stories, but still it affect your perception about Kalidas. Right. Same thing about Ramcharit Manas, who has written Ramcharit Manas.
Tulsidas.
Tulsidas ji. So there is one very famous story about Tulsidas ji, right? That he was so much in love with his wife that one night when she came to her own parental home, he went at night. Whether it was raining and it was raining cats and dog, and still he went to her place at night, in the late night, and when he was standing in the entrance door, she said that why are you doing this?
Yes.
If you love the God in such a manner, you will attain him. You will attain God. If you have this kind of madness for me, this kind of madness
God.
may lead you to God. So such stories, and this might have inspired him to write Ramcharitmanas, right? So such stories, such information, biographical information, do help us. This is my own perception. I may be right, I may be wrong. As per new critics, these stories are misleading. According to those of the older school, literature provides primarily an opportunity for exercising what they perceive to be really relevant scholarly, scholarly and cultural disciplines such as history, linguistics, biography, and philosophy. So these people, the older school people, they thought that this is an opportunity that you can exercise, and you can exercise your perception, and that may also be relevant in another cultural and scholarly disciplines such as history, linguistic, biography, and philosophy. So while studying a literary text, you can also master all these discipline, or you can have knowledge regarding this. It is not a question of mastering a particular discipline, but you can have knowledge regarding history, linguistics, biography, and philosophy. And I think there cannot be watertight compartments between all these disciplines, and that is why our government in national education policy have now started to put emphasis on multidisciplinary aspects of education, because while learning an art, when you are learning a story, when you are appreciating a story, you may study about history, may you may learn something regarding science, you may learn something regarding philosophy, right? And I think there is nothing wrong. Again, historical or biographical approach. It focuses on the life, times, and environment of the author. And this does affect all these things, they do affect the psyche of the author. See, without having any experience or intention, no author starts, or no author takes a pen and starts writing something, right? So his life experiences, his times, the time in which he is living, the age, and the environment in which he is living, all these affect his own life. And you know that any piece of writing, it is the result of his own experiences, and this approach deals with the effect of these factors on the work of art. So nobody can deny this, that all these factors do affect the life of an author and indirectly the work of an art, right? So most of literary works can be analyzed in the light of historical and biographical method. If you don't understand the impact of the age, the political events. If a writer is writing during war, World War First and World War Second, see, their writing is quite different. Hmm. And when a writer is writing in a peace time, so the whole thing will be different. So political historical background always affect the, what we say, the thought patterns of the writer. So, a writer or a critic who studies the work in accordance with the period in which the work is produced. Thus, the values and perception of the reader's own age are put aside. A reader, a critic, studies the work in accordance with the period in which the work is produced. Like when you study Shakespearean play, now Shakespearean is different. And if we are evaluating in our 21st century now, then the whole perception will be different. We are not looking at the things as it was seen in the Shakespeare's time. It is solely different. We will evaluate Shakespearean dialogues, his own settings, everything in the context of 21st century. Our own perception will be different, right? Now, this historical or biographical, that is traditional approach, establishes a kind of bridge between the reader and the age and the world of the author. As I told you, if you don't have the biographical information regarding Shakespeare, how will you able to respect him? Because as it is told, this Shakespeare was just taking care of horses parked outside the theater in England. So at that time, there were open air theaters, and Shakespeare was doing this duty of taking care of horses which were parked outside the theater. Now, by doing his duty, he was listening to all the dialogues, the drama, and the dialogues. Now, he must have learned something during those sessions which were going inside the theater. He might not be able to look at the what do we say, scene going on the stage, but he was able to listen to those dialogues, and he became the master of writing dialogues. So how a man can master only having this much of background of having the experience of a drama, how to write a play, but he could master it, and he became the world master of writing plays, his comedies, tragedies, everything, even today Shakespearean plays, even in Ahmedabad, they enact the plays of Shakespeare today. So this is how historical and biographical background, the knowledge, the information, if we have, we can understand the writer, the author, as well as his text in a better manner. So it is kind of, building a bridge between the reader and the age and the world of the author. It is very difficult um, to visualize or to understand the author's own world, in what kind of world he might have grown up, what kind of experiences he might have. See, if we talk about Milton, you must have heard the name of John Milton,
John Milton.
who wrote Paradise Lost
Paradise.
and Paradise Regained. Now, if you don't have any information, any biographical information, you may read the Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. But if I give you an additional information that Milton was blind, okay? If I say that he was blind, right, and he made his friend to write this Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. Any one of you have read Paradise Lost? Shriji Rani? You must have read. Anyone? No.
No, ma'am, I have not read yet.
Sorry?
No, ma'am, not yet read.
Okay, okay. But let me tell you, if you start reading Paradise Lost, the very first scene he has described in Paradise Lost is a scene of pandemonium. Now, what is the meaning of pandemonium? The word pandemonium means hell, Hell, hell. That is the opposite of heaven. Now, he has described the whole scene of hell in which Satan. Now, Satan's name is not Satan in Paradise Lost. He is Lucifer. Now, he has described Lucifer also. Right. So, in when we watch Ramayana or Mahabharata, our Rakshasas, they're described in the same way. The whole hell in which fire is going on everywhere, and Lucifer, with two different kind of gestures, he has been described, and in such a nice manner. When you read this description, and when you know that the person who has described this whole scene was blind, see, how will you feel? You will be fascinated by the art of that person, of that poet. How Milton could write this description when he himself had no eyes. See, he had never seen the whole world which is available on earth. Then how can he imagine the hell? What kind of hell he might have imagined? He might have written. So this kind of historical and biographical informations, when you come to know about a particular author, the creator, the poet, it helps in understanding. So it helps the reader, and it kind of builds a bridge between the author and the reader, and it also helps you to understand the age of the author. See, if you have read Chaucer, this I'm sorry, I'm talking about all English literature which you have not learned, but Chaucer is called the father of English poetry, and he wrote Troilus and Cressida. He wrote the Canterbury Tale. He was born and brought up in 14th century, and he worked as a human of the king of that time. So this information about the Chaucer, it gives you lot many information to understand his Canterbury Tales. Now, when you read Canterbury Tales, I don't think that I have talked about it earlier in last lecture. But now this Canterbury is a very pious place, holy place for pilgrimage. Now, in that age, people started to go to Canterbury on foot. There are 28 pilgrims who were walking towards Canterbury. And every night, if each person told his or her story. So there is one knight's tale, there is one old wives' tales. There's 22 tales which have been written by Chaucer. Now the whole things take you to the Chaucer's age when you read it. What kind of an age it was. And when you get this additional information regarding Chaucer, then you understand that life of the author, that age of the author in a better manner. So these historical events and the values of his age help us understand the work in a similar way the literary works which gives information of the author and his own period. So when we talk about Victorian literature or Elizabethan literature, or even in our context, it is Gandhi Yuga. So when we talk about Victorian literature, the title itself suggests so many characteristics of this age. So how the historical single word, Victorian literature, the title itself suggests so many things. Elizabethan literature. So as soon as there is a reference to Elizabethan literature, that means Renaissance was there. Now, what is the meaning of Renaissance? Again, there may be a question. Renaissance means
नवसर्जन
yes.
नवसर्जन काळ
Ha, Navsarjan, Punaruthan. There was a respect for science. Scientific methods they loved.
Yes.
They did not believe in black magic, and in life there was a resurgence, and that resurgence from the religious point of view also, and in life also. And in that age, then this praise started, and that is why the whole life had been changed. So with, as I told you, with the name itself, with this historical reference itself, says you so many things. When we talk about Gandhi Yuga or the literature written in Gandhi period, then again it indicates so many things. And it itself it itself throws light on that period. Gandhi means a freedom fighting. Gandhi means India's what we say, the downtrodden people were living very difficult life. And that is why Uma Shankar Joshi, who is considered to be one of the poets of Gandhian youth, he wrote one poem called Bhukhya Janono Jatarani Jagse, right? The whole context is there. When the hungry people will start revolting, what will happen? That kind of poem he has written. Kalidas, we have already talked about him. Now, a French critic, Hippolyte Taine, he suggested one phrase called "res milu at moment" in his book History of English Literature. Now, what does this mean? Res stands for culture and history. Res stands for culture and history. So these are the aspects which affect the literature. Milieu is a place or a social context. So culture, history, and society or social context. And moment is time. So the time, the age also affect the output of literature. Whatever is written in a particular age is very much the product of that period, of that time. Nobody can deny this. Now, Emily Dickinson, I have added one more example. Her poems on life, death, and a gentleman caller. Emily Dickinson is one of the most popular poetess of 20th century, and all her poems were published posthumously, that is after her death. Here was such a poetess who did not wish to publish, but after she was dead, some of her relatives, they found her poems and then they published it. Her poems are such a wonderful poems. You can never imagine that a single lady might have written such nice poems. And the theme of her poems are life, death, and as well as one gentleman caller. Now, if you read these poems, I would request you all to read at least 10 poems. They are available on Google. The best 10 poems of Emily Dickinson's. You will be just surprised, with the beauty of the words, of her experience, of her expression. She has written about a gentleman caller. In her dreams, one gentleman caller comes having a card, and he comes and fetches her away somewhere. Now, if you don't have any biographical background of Emily Dickinson, how can you understand her sentiments reflected in her poems and expressed in such a nice manner if you don't have the biographical information, the biographical data of her life? Now, let me tell you, Emily Dickinson was a spinster. A spinster means she was not married at the even elderly age. She was a single person, right? When we talk about Charles Dickens's characters, they are all colored with Victorian milieu, time and culture. Charles Dickens is a representative author of Victorian period. That means all his characters, he has written about thousands characters. He has written number of novels. And I think each and every representation of Victorian period is available in Charles Dickens's novel, like David Copperfield. So this is the product of time. Charles Dickens, if he had been born and brought up in some other age, he might not have written this about these characters. His characters might have been different, because all these experiences, all the persons he had seen, he had come across, they were a Victorian product. And being a novelist, he is a representative of his own age. And that is why all these writers, all these poets, they are called the representative of their particular age. Now, I think I should read Emily Dickinson's life. One poem. This is Emily Dickinson. As you see her, she was a spinster. She was very weak. She was almost all the time sick. And still, she has written poems regarding happiness, enjoyment, everything, every aspect in life she has covered. And every aspect in death, she says that I'd visualize my own funeral. I think there is one poem I have written also. If I can stop one heart from breaking, if I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. I will definitely try to stop that heart from breaking. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. See, few lines, but so beautiful. The wish to help others, to wish add something, some happy moments in someone's life. It is expressed in this nice poem by Emily Dickinson. Another two poems, I have not taken the whole poems, I have taken some part of it. I felt a funeral in my brain. I felt a funeral in my brain and mourners to and fro. See, I see I have been dead and there is a funeral and the mourners, the people, my relatives, my friends, they are mourning and they're moving to and fro nearby my dead body. Kept trading till it seemed that science was breaking through. I kept trading till it seemed that science was breaking through. I was trying to, kind of having the feeling, and then my senses broke through. So, this is how the experience of death is beautifully, it's so perfectly rather expressed in a poem. Then, as I told you, one more poem, one more piece of poem. I am nobody. Who are you? I am nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there is a pair of us. Don't tell. They would advertise.
Yes.
See, here, her, what we say, wish to having a union with someone like her. I am nobody. So if we are also nobody, then we can make a pair. So this also shows her wish to have a kind of union with someone. This is done. Now, the approach of traditional, this traditional approach, having some information regarding the biography, regarding the life of an author, or some historical information. So it sees literary work chiefly as a reflection of its author's life and times, or the characters in the work. When we talk about it, we have generally taken poems, but when we take some novels and when we talk about the characters in the work, again and again, I feel my limitation of talking about so many characters which come to my mind. But when you are not all students of English literature, I limit myself. But if we have read The Wuthering Heights, then there are so many characters which reflect the author's life and time. But let me limit myself because this is not going to help you understand that thing. But I can give you the example of Hardy, Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy, you must have heard about. Okay. Or Henry Fielding. There are four precursors of English novel. And out of those four, these are the major names whom you must know. But as you are not students of English literature, I cannot talk much about them. So the one critic called Taine compared the work of literature to the fossil of a leaf, which tells the world of a previous age. Not only leaf, now our archaeological department or archaeological survey of India, they have found out so many fossils, so many avshays, what we call, in Rakhigadi, in Lothal, in Haryana, everywhere. So there, even in Gujarat, we have received some fossils of dinosaur eggs,
Yes.
and now they are making some one large museum on it, right? So you understand what the fossil, what is the significance of fossils is there. They tell you so many things regarding the age. Yeah, like Harappan civilization, we came to know about from the structures which we found there in Lothal and in this place, what is it, Dolavira. So they tell you what kind of civilization it was. The same way, a piece of literature, even if it is a small piece of literature, a small poem, they tell you so many things. Like I have taken one more poem which will tell you about the whole Victorian period, what kind of period it was, and why the poet is having the same feeling. So a fossil of a leaf also can, expose the whole world of a previous age. Now here it is a very serious thing, a serious in the sense that our history is not what we say holy, or when we talk about history, it is always a history about bloodshed. So John Milton's sonnet, I talked earlier about John Milton and his Paradise Lost. He has written one sonnet on the late massacre in Piedmont. Now, this poem, this sonnet, illustrates the topical quality that great literature may and often does possess, the historical elements. The whole poem itself has the historical context. On a particular event, when he came across that event, he wrote this sonnet. And this sonnet commemorates the slaughter in 1655 of the Waldenses, member of a Protestant sect. It was a slaughter in 1655 in 17th century, and slaughter of members of a Protestant act. Now you can understand the context. Whenever you must have read the history of Christianity and Protestantism and this thing, Puritanism also. So they were living in the valleys of northern Italy. This massacre was done in northern Italy. A knowledge of this background clarifies at least one rather factual reference and two allusions in the poems. There are two references in the poem. So, without having this historical context of this particular event, you can never understand those allusions in the poem. So, the factual historical references, how they are important, and how this traditional approach to evaluate, to judge a particular work of art helps us. If we don't consider these historical evidences or historical events, the whole thing, the whole allusions or the whole reference will be out of place. We will not be able to understand the thing. As I told you, we have taken the lyric poems and we have here not considered novels much. But if we consider the novels, then this particular interpretative approach, they usually treat a broader range of experience, broader than the poems do, and thus are affected more extrinsic factors. So in novels, you can find these external references more helpful. And still, we can say that it is a mistake, however, to think that poets do not concern themselves with social themes, or that good poetry cannot be written about such themes. It is not that a poem can be written only on beautiful natural scenes, or poems can be written on love themes. Poems can be written on any kind of themes. It may be tragic, like elegies. Elegies are written on kind of deaths. If your friend has died and if you write a poem on your friend, how do you miss him? Then it is called an elegy. If you feel that your friend is such a praiseworthy person, or the king is a praiseworthy person, and when you write a poem praising him, then it becomes a eulogy. विच इज रिटन, जैसे हमारे उसमें स्तुति कहते हैं, हम देवों के लिए भी स्तुति करते हैं, तो दोज आर eulogies. And all kind of poem can be written. It is not that poem cannot be written on social, political, or any other context. It can neither only be nature poems or love poems. It can have any kind of theme. I will explain you when I am talking about the poem Break, 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 written by Tennyson. Actually, poets have from earliest times, they have been historians, the interpreters of contemporary culture, and the prophets of their people. Poets have not a single role to play. They are writing poems, but they can be historians also. They can be interpreters of culture also, and they can be the prophets of the people also. So poets are bearing the brunt of so many responsible roles. For example, Blake's London is an outcry against the oppression of human beings by society. This poem, written by William Blake, The London, it is written on how oppressive life of human being is in their society at a particular period of time. It was in 18th century. And he lashes out against child labor in his day. He attacks against the child labor, which was prevalent in his day. And the church indifferent to it. See, he also reveals the truth that the church was indifferent to the fact of child labor, which should not be there in any society. There is a there is a law against child labor today. So how such things can happen? And a poet can be a revolutionary poet also. It is not that he is always writing about the love and nature and life, good life, peaceful life. Against the government's indifference to the indignant soldiers who has served his country faithfully, and against the horrible and unnatural consequences of a social code that represses sexuality. So many themes he has covered. He shows that how human beings are oppressed in his society, how child labor is there, and how even church is indifferent to it. Even the government is indifferent. Even the government is not looking at the honesty and the services of the soldier. So there are so many, what do we say, grievances in the poem reflected in the Blake's poem, The London. I have taken another poem, and that is an example of Tennyson's poem. Now, Tennyson is again a product of Victorian age. The title of the poem is Break, Break, Break. Now, what does it mean? You can have so many interpretations. As a reader, how do you interpret these words? Break, break, break. On thy cold grey stones, O sea, he is addressing the sea, the wild sea which is across him, and the cold grey stones. And I would that my tongue could utter the thoughts that arise in me. Oh, well for the fisherman's boy, that he shouts with his sister at play. Oh, well for the sailor's lad, that he signs in his boat on the bay. And the stately ships go on to their heaven under the hill. But oh, for the touch of a vanished hand. See, these are the important words on which you should focus upon. Oh, for the touch of a vanished hand. He says, the hand which is vanished, and the sound of a voice that is still. The sound of a voice that is still. Break, break, break at the foot of thy crags, O sea. But the tender grace of a day that is dead will never come back to me. Now, if you don't have any historical background of Victorian age, if you don't have any background of the event which occurred in Tennyson's life before he writes this, you how much will you be able to understand this poem? How much did you get out of this poem? Can you imagine what might have happened to Tennyson so that he has written such a poem? It is an elegy. It is an elegy means, now let me start giving you some background. His friend was dead, and he has written this poem on the death of his friend. Now, can you make out something? Anyone? Anyone? Hello?
Uh,
Anyone?
maybe this is actually, it's looking like that it's talking about the waves which are coming and breaking on the seashore, but maybe it is his personal feeling, how he's feeling about his friend's death, and he wants to break through it. I mean, he maybe he want to break through the isolation, what he's feeling, the kind of the emotions that he's feeling. He wants to break that feeling, something like that.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
So your interpretation is also, because every reader has his or her own interpretation. You have nicely interpreted the things. The thing which he wishes to, the first thing is what is breaking? The waves might be breaking when they are clashing against those cold gray stones, right? The first thing is that. Again, what is breaking? Then his own feelings, his heart, which is, which is having an outburst of feelings because his own friend, dear friend, has been dead. Okay, this is the background. So when you come to know that his friend is dead, you can understand the poem in a better manner. The grief, the loss which he has felt, and his own personal expression of his own feelings for his friend, they are expressed in this poem. Secondly, he has made multiple projection in this poem, like he's showing the changes in the Victorian period. When he says the seller's lad, the fisherman's boy, They are happy. He says, "Oh, well for the fisherman's boy that he shouts with his sister at play. Oh, well for the sailor lad that he signs in his boat on the bay." Now, for these two persons, a fisherman boy and a sailor's lad, a boy of a particular sailor, for both of them, because he's feeling happy. Why? Now, again, the historical context, if you know, that was at that particular point of history, the government had impacted reform bills in England during Victorian age. Now, these reform bills were better for these fishermen and sailors. Okay. And Tennyson himself belonged to this kind of class only. He was also a fisherman's boy. So he was happy that now my same class will be happy under this regime, and these reform bills will make their lives happier. Again, in the next two lines, but oh, for the touch of a vanished hand. My friend who was touching my hand, now that touch of that hand is vanished. It is not there. His sound who was speaking to me, now that is still. That sound, that the voice is not there. Right? So, in that manner, he is representing the Victorian. Again, he says, sailing. Yeah, there is one reference to ship. Where is it? Huh. And that stately ships go on. It shows the Victorian spirit of, even state had to venture. They went on ship and they went on, adventures and what we say, trade and commerce. So that spirit of trade and commerce, that spirit of adventure, that is also mentioned in this line. And the stately ships go on to their heaven under the hill. Okay, and in the last line, but the tender grace of a day that is dead will never come back to me. Tender grace of a day, because now it is twilight and the night is falling. So now that day, bright day, which is dead, will never come back to me because of the friend's death. Okay. So do you think again biographical historical details are helping in appreciating, in judging, in understanding a particular piece of literature? Okay. Now, there are some other aspects also, moral philosophical approach or moral thematic criticism that you can understand. I think I talked about Roman critics like Plato, Horace, right? They also talk about the importance of morality. And the basic position of such critics is that larger function of literature is to teach morality. As I told you, there are two poles. One says art for art's sake, second says art for morality. So in one period, art for art's sake might be getting more weightage. In another period, after 50 years, the critics, the writers, the authors, they might be believing in art for morality, right? As I told you, like narrow pant and bell bottom pant, it goes on changing every after 50 years. And so this way, the morality is also an important issue. Horace states in his Ars Poetica, that is art of poetry, that literature should be sweet and useful. Now, sweetness has something to do with briefness also. If I go on speaking, for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you might lose the charm of it. So, short and sweet and useful. Whenever you talk useful, it becomes significant. But when you find it is not useful, you lose interest out of it. So, it means literature should be both entertaining and enlightening. This is the theory of Horace. He says that literature should be only entertainment is not good. It should be enlightening. हमारे वहां जो कहते हैं ना ज्ञान और गम्मत, यानी एंटरटेनमेंट एंड ज्ञान, both should go together. Sir Philip Sidney adopts the same view in literary criticism in the defense of poesy, and he said, right poets imitate to teach and delight. Sidney says that a right poet, a good creator, a good writer, he imitates. See, every piece of literature, every piece of music, every piece of painting, every piece of art is, after all, an imitation, right? So he imitates to teach and delight. And to imitate, borrow nothing of what it is, had been or shall be, but range only reigned with learned discretion into the divine consideration of what may be and should be. Say, the authors, the poets, religion is to teach and delight, and that also with divine consideration. This is the most important aspect which we should consider, that whenever a poet is writing a poem, his intention is to teach you something, to please you, as well as with a kind of divine consideration. The next in what we say order, the critic comes, a Victorian critic whose name is Matthew Arnold, and he adopted a real attitude. He insisted that a great literary work must possess high seriousness. Now, this word high seriousness was also used by Aristotle. When he talked about a tragedy, he said that a drama is written with high seriousness. He has given characteristics of a protagonist. Anybody cannot be a protagonist. A protagonist means a hero must be like Ram or Krishna, right? And in Iliad and Homer's Odyssey, they should be like their characters, you know. So anybody cannot be, any ordinary person cannot be a protagonist. The same way, your language, the words you use, it should be also with high seriousness. It should, give you, like Valmiki's Ramayana or Mahabharata. The language should be chosen which can be appropriate for this kind of theme, which is highly serious. The important thing is the moral or philosophical teaching. We have talked about it earlier. In the large sense, all great literature teaches. The critic who employs the moral philosophical approach insists on ascertaining and stating what is taught. See, all the time, whatever you learn or whatever you read may not be teaching you new things. It may be that you are reading which may be already taught to you, but still it is necessary, and that is why the author is repeating it. He is ascertaining by stating it again and again. If the work is in any degree significant or intelligible, this meaning will be that. Now, textual studies, as I told you, this started with Michel Foucault. I think I have written one slide on him, but still so many slides are there. I think if we have some discussion, that will be more important, because all these slides you can read if, yeah. Now, having this discussion of literary biographical background, as you try to understand, it is helpful to us while interpreting a work of art. But there came a person whose name was Michel Foucault, and with his declaration that the author is dead, the problem started. So much importance was given to the life of the author, his experiences, the events which occurred during his time, the historical evidences, the biographical evidences, the social events which affected his life. All this was considered very important. So far, now with this declaration, the author is dead. The people were left to utter confusion. Now, what to do? When there is no importance of author, when the author is dead, you have to just look at what he has written. Then, how the things will go? The author is irrelevant. The traditional methods considered to be nonsensical, a threat to civilization. Not only that, they said ki you just avoid this biographical, historical background details, information regarding the author. Don't just keep them aside, but they are threat to civilization. Means you should never consider them. And what you have to consider is only and only the text. So existence of an author cannot be denied, but the privilege value vanished. Author is existing. How can you deny the existence of an author? Author is there, sitting in a corner. But the importance, the significance, the value which was assigned to the author, now it was vanished. And with this skepticism about the author, about his style, the mind, the psyche of the author, the identity of the author, everything was nullified. And with this, the birth of new criticism occurred. I mean, this, the critics who were called the new critics, they started thinking in this direction that there should be no consideration given to historical, biographical, or social context. These are the bibliography which you can utilize for your further reading. Okay, and thank you. I omitted some of the slides, but whenever it will be required, I will talk about it, because I thought that today it was more than enough for you. Now, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
Ma'am, I have a question. When we are studying this, I mean, how to we write the critical analysis and all. But this is like when we talk about like our Hindu studies.
Hmm.
How can we use this when we are like critical writing a critical analysis about any scripture or something, or like how can we correlate these two things?
Yeah, see, there are these are the Western theories. Right now, we
Yeah.
do not have any what we say possibility of comparing or contrasting. But in later stage, when the advanced theories like deconstruction, right, postmodernism or capitalism or Marxism, when we study them, then again we will try to make parallels with our Hindu philosophy or our Hindu kavya shastra or theories, what we say, the criticism. Okay, but right now during this period, I mean Victorian age and new critics, again whenever there is an individual critic who is talking in the same manner, I will mention it to you. Right, like Sasuri is talking about some theories which have some parallels with Bhartrhari. Right, his theory of deconstruction, or what we say, signs signified and signify. It Bhartrhari's Vakyapadiyam.
Okay, got it, ma'am. Okay,
The thing
okay,
is,
yes.
the thing is told about in an extensive way, we talk about vakya. It is not merely a word. A sign means a word, right? And so that way, these people have given us some fragmented theories, whereas our what we say, Vidwana Panditas, they have given us the whole things, out of which some of the theories have been propounded by these Westerners. That also we will have to find out. I have found out some articles which are making some parallels, but right now we are learning the basic theories, Western theories. Okay, in later stage we will make a comparison with our Indian poetics.
Yeah, got it, ma'am. Got it. Right. Because anything like this, Westerners are teaching and giving the theory. This was much more. It was with us, with our culture, much more before that.
Mm, yeah, you can say that.
Okay.
Yes, anyone else? आप हिंदी में भी पूछ सकते हैं, ये तो इंग्लिश का पेपर है तो
हाँ, direct Western theory. Now this is a modern period, you can say Victorian period or so, whatever. ये तो 30, 40, 50, 100 साल 200 साल की बात है. तो इस थियरी और हिंदू स्टडीज, मतलब ये थियरी का सिग्निफिकेंस, इसका इम्पैक्ट हिंदू स्टडीज के साथ में कैसे होगा?
सी आप हमें ये देखना है how both the things are different, as well as how Hindu studies is superior to these Western theories.
Yes.
Right.
What?
और अगर जब तक हम वेस्टर्न थियरीज को पढ़ेंगे नहीं,
हाँ हाँ,
तब तक हम उसका कंपेरिजन